Hello. It's good to see you. Today we are going to be reading a very old book about sanitation. This is a primer of sanitation that was published in 1911. So it's 110 years old. And I just noticed, I bought this in an antique store. I only paid $1 for it. It looked really interesting. And I noticed that there were a couple of little inscriptions here. They're very faint. You can see this one a little bit better. They were written in cursive. People had very nice handwriting back then. I actually have some old school papers from my grandmother. She was born in the very early 1900s and went to one of the famous, like a one-room schoolhouse where all the kids were taught together. And I have some of her old homework where she was practicing cursive, and she was actually really good at it. But let's see, this is kind of hard to read. I want to read, these are like things you might have written in a yearbook. I don't know, it looks like two different people wrote these. This one says, "Remember me early, remember me late. Remember me as your dear schoolmate. Your cousin," it looks like Martha or Maddie. It's kind of hard to read. This one says, "When years and months have glided by, and on this page you cast your eye, remember it was a friend sincere that left a kind remembrance here." And then we just have some initials. I thought that was kind of sweet. This was an old school book. And I guess a couple of their friends wrote little notes in here. So this is a primer of sanitation. And there's a little preface in here. And then you have your table of contents. We have sections on all kinds of things. And I think we could maybe in future videos read some more of these. Here's one on diphtheria, the air passages in the lungs, tetanus, influenza, whooping cough and colds, tuberculosis, the treatment of consumption, disease germs in dust, the alimentary canal, typhoid fever, diseases caused by relatives of the typhoid germ, other bacterial diseases of the intestines, disease germs in water, other bacterial diseases, protozoa, malarial fever and yellow fever, and mosquitoes. Oh, there's more. Gosh. Yeah, smallpox. Ooh, intestinal worms. The importance of sanitation. The housefly. Disease germs in food. Disinfection. Unhygienic habits. Public sanitation. What governments can do to preserve the public health, and practical sanitation. We could just start with chapter 1. This one is titled, "Why the Study of Disease Germs is Important." Suppose that in a happy and healthful village a strange plant should suddenly spring up and give off poisonous matter into the air. Suppose that everyone who passed by it became ill, and that all the people who lived near it died because of the deadly gases from the plant. Would the people of the village allow that plant to ripen its seeds and scatter them abroad, so that in a short time plants of the same kind would be growing along all the streets and in all the dooryards? Or would the people cut down the plant and destroy it, root and branch? Suppose that poisonous serpents should appear in a town and should attack the people. Would the inhabitants of that town allow the serpents to live and multiply in the streets and about their houses? Or would they hunt out and kill the reptiles that were doing them so much injury? The people would certainly destroy both the deadly plant and the poisonous serpents, for no one would wish to suffer illness or death because of them. Poisonous plants like the one described above do not exist, and in most parts of the world, dangerous serpents are very rare. But in all the earth there is not a town or a village where there are not great numbers of very small plants and animals that attack the people and cause many of them to become sick and die. These small plants and animals are called disease germs, and they cause many of the worst diseases that afflict mankind. A blind man who attempts to walk through a wood is always groping and feeling his way, even when there is nothing in front of him. And he bumps into the trees when there is plenty of room for him to pass between them. So a person who does not understand about germs often needlessly worries himself trying to escape them, and then in some simple manner allows the germs to get to him. In this book we shall study about disease germs and how to avoid them. Chapter 2 is the cells of the body. Here is figure 1. When we look at a house from a distance, we cannot see the bricks of which it is built. Figure 2. When we stand close to the house, we can easily see the bricks in the walls. As a house is built of bricks and a heap of sand is composed of a multitude of small grains, so is the human body made up of a great number of very small parts called cells. These cells are so small that we cannot see them without a microscope. But if you could examine a small piece of skin or other part of the body under a microscope, you could very easily see the cells of which it is composed. The skin, the muscles, the liver, the stomach, the brain, and all the other body parts are built of these little cells. The cells are alive. The cells of the body are exceedingly small. So small are they that it would take about 2,500 of them placed side by side to make a row an inch long. There are 5 million cells in a very small drop of blood, and according to one estimate, 400 billion cells in the average human body. Each one of the little cells of the body is alive. Each one takes in food and grows and does all those things that make a living being different from sticks and stones and other things that are not alive. When the cells are in health, the body is in health. When the cells are dead, the body is dead. For the life of the body is in the cells of which it is built. When we look at the body, we cannot see the cells of which it is made, but with the microscope, the cells of the body are easily seen. Keeping our bodies in health. Certain things are necessary to the cells of the body. They must have food, they must have oxygen from the air, they must get rid of their poisonous wastes, and they must have a constant temperature, neither too hot nor too cold. If our cells do not have all these things, they will die. They may be killed in other ways too, as by being crushed, by electricity, and by poisons. To keep our bodies in health, therefore, we must supply our cells with the things that they need, and we must keep poisons and other injurious substances away from them. Disease germs. Our bodies are very wonderful machines, but sooner or later, sickness comes to most of us. Sometimes the stomach and other digestive organs fail to work properly, and then the cells suffer from a lack of food. Sometimes the heart and blood vessels become diseased, and then the blood fails to circulate through the body as it should. Sometimes the kidneys fail in their work, and then the cells are injured by poisonous wastes. But the most common of all causes of sickness is that disease germs get into the body and poison the cells. In the next chapter, we shall learn more about these small germs and how they cause disease. We have figures A, B, and C. They are quite small. Figure A is a single cell as it appears under the microscope. B is a cell drawn to show that it has length, breadth, and thickness. C is a group of cells showing how they are built together in the body. Figure 5 is a section of the outer layer of the skin as it appears under a microscope. The outer cells die and fall off as dry scales. Chapter 3. Disease germs and how they get into the body. Disease germs are the greatest enemies of mankind. Every day they kill thousands of people, and they cause the loss of an untold amount of time and money. To get an idea of the amount of sickness, sorrow, and loss that is caused by these small creatures, imagine a land where no colds, catarrh, consumption, influenza, diphtheria, or pneumonia ever come. A land where boils, blood poisoning, and tetanus are unknown, where there is no smallpox, measles, scarlet fever, whooping cough, or mumps. A land without malaria, cholera, leprosy, yellow fever, or plague. A land free from typhoid fever and from many of the other diseases that afflict mankind. Picture to yourself a country and a people free from all these diseases, a country where many of the inhabitants pass from childhood to old age without sickness or disease, and you will have an idea of what a land without disease germs would be like. Here we have a quote from Louis Pasteur. It is within the power of man to cause all parasitic diseases to disappear from the world. What disease germs are. In water and in the soil, there are millions of little plants and animals. Plants and animals so small that they can be seen only with a powerful microscope. The body of one of these little plants or animals is composed of a single cell. The little one-celled plants are called bacteria, singular bacterium. The little one-celled animals are called protozoa, singular protozoan. Disease germs are bacteria and protozoa that grow in the body and poison the cells. Where disease germs come from? At this point, you should get it firmly fixed in your mind that disease germs are living plants and animals, and that just as a pine tree can only come from the seed of a pine tree, or as a chicken can only come from the egg of a chicken, so a disease germ can only come from another germ of the same kind. And here we have figure 6. The great outdoor world is practically free from germs, according to this. It's kind of cool to mention as an aside, this was published before the pandemic that struck around 1917, 1918 during World War I, or at the tail end of World War I, called the Spanish flu by some. It actually took one of my grandmother's brothers, was killed during this, died with the Spanish flu. It is a common idea that germs spring from unclean and decaying matter, that filth breeds disease germs, but this idea is not correct. They are often found in unclean matter, and it is dangerous to have such matter about because it furnishes a place where germs may multiply. But germs can no more originate in such matter than a cow can come from the grass in the pasture, or a stalk of corn can spring up where no grain of corn has been planted in the earth. Nearly all the germs that attack us are spread from the bodies of persons who are sick with germ diseases. The world not swarming with disease germs. From the very beginning of your study of this subject, you should clearly understand that the world is not filled with disease germs that are lying in wait to attack us. It is true that bacteria and protozoa are abundant in water, that bacteria are swarming in the soil, and that they are constantly being blown about in the air. But of all the many hundreds of kinds of bacteria and protozoa that are in the world, only a few cause diseases. The others are harmless, and even when they get into our bodies, it is not we, but the bacteria and protozoa that suffer. The germs of most diseases quickly die outside the human body. It is a mistake to think that every breath of air is dangerous and that all food and water contain disease germs. The winds that blow over the meadows, the rain that falls from the clouds, the trees of the forest, the grass in the pasture, and in general, the great outdoor world are practically free from germs. In the bodies of persons who are sick from germ diseases, in the houses where sick people live, and wherever the wastes from the bodies of the sick go, there, and in most cases there only, are disease germs to be found. In figure 7, the germs that attack us come from the bodies of the sick. The first great rule for the prevention of germ diseases. The first great rule for the prevention of germ diseases is, destroy the germs that come from the bodies of the sick. If all the diphtheria germs that come from human throats could be destroyed, there would soon be no more diphtheria. If all smallpox germs that come from the bodies of persons who have the disease could be destroyed, there would soon be no more smallpox. It is easier to destroy germs as they come from the bodies of the sick than it is to destroy them after they have been spread abroad, and a little intelligent care used in keeping germs from being scattered would every year save millions of lives. How germs enter the body. Except in a few cases, which we shall discuss later, germs do not pass through the unbroken skin, but nearly all germs that enter the body get into it through wounds or through the mouth or nose. In later chapters, we shall learn that germs get into the body through cuts and sores. We shall study about biting insects, mosquitoes, flies, ticks, fleas, and bedbugs that pierce our germ-proof armor, the skin, and place germs directly in the wounds that they make. We shall read of other germs that enter the body by way of the nose, and we shall learn how very dangerous germs may reach the mouth from flies, from the hands, from drinking cups, in food and water, and in many other ways. Here we wish only to call your attention to the fact that wounds, many of them made by insects, the nose and the mouth are the gateways through which disease germs get into the body. The second great rule for the prevention of germ diseases. The second rule for the prevention of germ diseases is take care of wounds, protect yourself from biting insects, and guard the mouth and nose. The first rule aims to keep disease germs from being scattered abroad. The second rule aims to keep out of the body the germs that do get scattered abroad. If we neglect either of these laws, we cannot hope to escape the diseases that are caused by germs. Chapter 4. The struggle between the body and the germs. In spite of the greatest care that we can use, all of us are certain at times to get the germs of very dangerous diseases into our bodies. Indeed, on the skin and in the throats of most persons, germs that can cause disease may at all times be found. Between these germs and the body, there is never-ceasing war. The germs attack the body. They try to grow in it and use it for food. To defend itself, the body kills the germs. Day by day and year by year, the struggle goes on, the germs attacking, the body fighting to keep out the germs. In this chapter, we shall learn how the body resists its small foes. How germs cause sickness. When disease germs grow in the body, they produce poisons that are called toxins. These toxins are carried through the body in the blood and cause sickness by poisoning the cells. A little group of tetanus germs in a small wound, or a small patch of diphtheria germs growing in the throat, may produce enough toxin to poison and kill the whole body. Figure 8. A shows the white and B the red corpuscles of the blood as they appear under a microscope. Try to fix clearly in your mind that it is not the germs themselves, but the toxins that the germs produce that cause the sickness. How the body destroys toxins. One way in which the body protects itself against germs is by producing antitoxins. When disease germs grow in the body and begin to poison it with toxin, the body begins to produce antitoxin. The antitoxin does not kill the germs, but it does destroy the toxin and thus saves the cells from being poisoned until in other ways the body can kill out the germs. How the body kills germs. If you should examine a drop of blood with a microscope, you would find a very great number of cells floating in the liquid part of the blood. These cells are of two kinds. Most of them are red in color, and these are called red corpuscles. Their work is to carry oxygen through the body. The other kind of cells in the blood are called white corpuscles. These are the soldiers of the body, and their work is to kill disease germs. A white corpuscle approaches a germ and flows about it or swallows it, as you see in figure 9. You can see the stages of it. It just kind of gulps it down. Then the corpuscle tries to digest and kill the germ, while the germ tries to grow in the corpuscle and use it for food. When the corpuscles are victorious, the germs are destroyed and the disease is stopped. But if the germs are too numerous and too powerful, the corpuscles are killed and the disease goes on until the body dies. Besides the white corpuscles, there is another great defender of the body, the germicidal or germ-killing substance in the blood. There is always some of this substance in the blood of a healthy person, and when disease germs attack the body, more of the germicidal substance appears in the blood and helps to kill them. In our fight against the germs, this germicidal substance is perhaps even more important than the white corpuscles. The body produces different germicidal substances in killing the germs of different diseases, just as different toxins and antitoxins are produced in different diseases. A person therefore may have a great power of killing the germs of one disease, as, for example, smallpox, and at the same time fall an easy victim to consumption or some other disease. Why we have certain diseases only once. When germs attack us, the body manufactures more of its germicidal substances to kill them. More and more of the germicidal substance is formed, and the blood becomes stronger and stronger in its power to kill germs. Finally, if the body is successful in its struggle with its enemies, the germicidal substance in the white corpuscles get the upper hand of the germs and recovery begins. After a patient recovers from some diseases, for example, smallpox, measles, and whooping cough, a large amount of germicidal substance remains in the blood for years or even for life. Any germs of these diseases that get into the blood and therefore promptly killed, and a person is seldom attacked by one of these diseases more than once. After other diseases, for example, pneumonia, influenza, and colds, the increased power of the body to kill the germs quickly disappears, and we may have these diseases again and again. Keeping up the resistance of the body to germs. Through all your study of germ diseases, you should bear in mind the importance of keeping up the germicidal power of the body. All of us, without knowing it, take into our bodies the germs of deadly diseases. As the seeds of plants lie in the cold earth waiting for the warmth of spring to come, so these germs often lie in the body waiting for a chance to grow. The only safe way, therefore, is to keep the body always in health, so that it will be able to kill any disease germs that may enter it. Overwork, exposure to cold, wet feet, hunger, fatigue, worry, lack of fresh air, lack of sleep, alcohol, all of these things injure the body and lower its germicidal power. It is the duty of everyone to keep himself in health, to care for his body intelligently and carefully, and to fail to do this is no more sensible than it would be sensible for the soldiers in a fort to open the gates and lie down to sleep in the midst of their enemies. Dry feet, fresh air, and plenty of sleep help to keep up the power of the body to kill germs. Alcohol and resistance to germs. Experiments on animals prove that alcohol lessens the power of the body to kill germs. When alcohol is given to rabbits, it is not possible to save them from rabies by the Pasteur treatment. Other experiments show that the germs which cause boils and blood poisoning are able to attack rabbits that have had alcohol more easily than they can attack rabbits that have had no alcohol. Since other experiments show that animals which have been given alcohol cannot resist the germs of cholera, tetanus, and other diseases so well as animals which have not been given alcohol. Experiments like these leave no room to doubt that alcohol taken into the body lessens the power of the blood to kill germs. Many physicians have long believed that this was true, for they have known that drinkers suffer far more from many germ diseases than do those who use no alcohol. A spell of drinking often brings on an attack of pneumonia, and the death rate from pneumonia is twice as high among drinkers as it is among abstainers. All statistics show that consumption attacks drinkers especially, the death rate from this disease being more than 5 times as high among brewers as it is among ministers. Wounds heal less rapidly in users of alcohol than in abstainers, and the inflammation is more likely to run into blood poisoning in a drinker. So in cholera and typhoid fever, it is the drinkers who suffer most, and there is every reason to believe that this is the case in all germ diseases. Drink no alcohol if you wish to keep up the power of your body to resist germs, for users of alcohol are attacked by germ diseases more frequently than abstainers, and many of them die of these diseases when they are attacked. The third great rule for the prevention of germ diseases. The third great rule for the prevention of germ diseases is keep the body in health so that it will be able to kill disease germs. A general does not risk the fate of his army on a single battle line, but behind the first line of soldiers he places a second line, and behind the second line he has still a third line of defense in case the enemy should break through the first and second lines. So in our warfare with the germs, we should not depend on any single line of defense. We should try to keep germs from being spread about. We should guard the gateways by which they enter the body, and within the body we should have the defenders at their posts. For sooner or later, just when we cannot tell, our unsleeping enemies will pass through the first and second lines of our defense. And if at that time the health of the body is low and the defenders of the body are weak, it will be the worse for us. Figure 11 is the castle of health. You have to read the 3 rules of prevention of germ diseases and tell what the 2 outer defenses of the castle and the walls of the castle itself represent. That's your homework. Chapter 5 is bacteria. Bacteria are the smallest of all living things. Millions of them have plenty of room to swim in a drop of water. 25,000 of them placed side by side would make a row only an inch long. Examined under a microscope, that would cause a man to appear as high as Mount Washington or Mount Mitchell. These small plants look about as large as periods and commas in ordinary print. So exceedingly small are they that they can pass through the pores of a brick as easily as a man can pass through the doorway of a house. The multiplication of bacteria. Bacteria multiply by simply pinching in 2. Some of them can divide and become full-grown in 15 or 20 minutes. But this, of course, is very rapid, even for a bacterium. They can easily divide once an hour, however, and at this rate, one bacterium would increase in 2 days to a really, really big number. Billions and billions. And in 3 days, its descendants would weigh 14,835,600 pounds. The shapes of bacteria. Bacteria are cylindrical, spherical, or spiral, shaped like a firecracker, a marble, or a corkscrew. The cylindrical bacteria are called bacilli. The spherical bacteria are called cocci, singular coccus, and the spiral forms are called spirilla, singular spirillum. The shapes of bacteria have nothing to do with the diseases which they cause, but often give a convenient way of distinguishing between different kinds. When bacteria are found in nature, bacteria are blown about in the air, clinging to particles of dust. They abound in the upper layers of the soil, but in ordinary soils do not live deeper than 3 feet below the surface. They are very abundant in the waters of streams, ponds, lakes, springs, and shallow wells. A quart of ordinary well water having in it something like 1,000,000 of them. They are always found in great numbers about the bodies of men and animals, flourishing especially in the mouth, nose, throat, and intestine, and on the skin. Dangerous, harmless, and useful bacteria. Some kinds of bacteria cause disease, and a few kinds are useful to man. Most of them, however, lead their little lives in the soil, in water, or even in our own bodies, and neither help nor harm us. Among useful bacteria are those that take a part in butter and cheese making, and those that help to increase the fertility of the land. The bacteria of decay, although they destroy much of our food, are also, on the whole, useful to us. Imagine what the world would look like if all the animals and plants that have lived and died in it were lying about us, and you will be convinced that the bacteria of decay are our friends and not our enemies. The spores of bacteria. Certain kinds of bacteria produce spores when hard times come upon them. A spore is formed by the living matter of a bacterium gathering itself into a little hard ball that rests, like a little seed, until food, moisture, and other good conditions for growth return. Then it grows again into an ordinary bacterium, which goes on growing and multiplying as before. So very difficult are bacterial spores to kill that some of them have been found alive after they have been dried for 10 years, and others are not killed by boiling them for several hours. Fortunately for us, the germs of none of our most common diseases produce spores, and these germs may be killed by a very moderate amount of heat. Figure 14. The right-hand figure shows a spore of a bacterium. Kind of looks like a Band-Aid. And this is our last chapter for now. This is chapter 6, the skin. And here we have a diagram of the skin. This is a little section of the skin. It shows a hair and the epidermis up here. That's a sweat gland. Without the skin to protect us, it is probable that bacteria would swarm into our bodies in such numbers that in a week there would not be a living human being in the world. We know that this is true because most of the bacteria that attack us enter the body by way of two small openings, the mouth and the nose, and because when even a single cut or tear is made in the skin, the body is sometimes hardly able to hold back the germs. If the inhabitants of a besieged city were hard-pressed to defend a single open gate of the city, we should not think that they stood much chance of holding back the enemy if the whole city wall were thrown down. So if the body is hardly able to defend itself when there is only one wound in the skin, we should not expect it to keep up the fight long if the covering behind which it is sheltered were removed. The structure of the skin. The skin is composed of an inner layer called the dermis and an outer layer called the epidermis. The hairs stand in deep, narrow pockets that are called hair follicles. Through the epidermis, the sweat glands open on the surface of the skin by little pores or openings. Bacteria that enter the body through the skin. These weak places in our armor of skin are the hair follicles and sweat glands. Through these weak points, certain bacteria do sometimes work down and cause inflammation, pimples, boils, carbuncles, and erysipelas. I don't know what that is. These same bacteria also enter the body through wounds, and a considerable number of other disease-producing bacteria get into the body either through wounds or by the bites of insects. Bacteria, real living plants. In the next chapter, we shall discuss the bacteria that enter the body through the skin. During your study of this chapter, as well as during your study of later chapters, it will help you greatly if you can get a clear picture in your mind of what bacteria are really like. Remember that the moss which clings to the bark of a tree is on the tree, even though you cannot see it from a distance. So if you could only see them with your unaided eyes, there are, as it were, great forests of bacteria growing on your skin, and clusters of bacteria hanging to particles of dirt and to the legs of flies, like you see here. If bacteria were large enough for us to see them without a microscope, a pencil that had been in someone's mouth would appear something like this, and the legs of a fly would be seen to be loaded with germs. Whether we see them or not, bacteria are real living plants, and you should be able to call up pictures of these little plants in your mind. You can help yourself to get clear and correct ideas in regard to bacteria by asking your teacher about the points that you do not understand, and you can learn much about them from a physician. For physicians know many things about bacteria that are not found in a little book of this kind. They can tell you many things that a teacher cannot be expected to know, and sometimes they allow boys and girls to look at bacteria through their microscopes. That would be cool. So we're going to stop there with our little handbook of sanitation. We have a lot of interesting chapters to come. If you would like to come back again, we will read some more. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. I will see you again soon.